For every pound of weight that you gain, you increase the number of miles of vasculature that your body provides to supply that region. That, I hope, you could connect the dot and say that this is going to affect blood pressure ultimately, okay? Whether it's the good kind or the bad kind, okay? If it's more metabolically active, generally not going to affect blood pressure negatively as if it's just more unmetabolically active, the F word. We have a pressure gradient that exists higher on the arterial side, very low on the venous side to help drive this blood forward through the system. Very high on the entry, very low on the exit end of the blood vessels. And that's good. That's great. That's fantastic. That's what drives blood flow, okay? Going from region of high to a region of low. It's what we do for diffusion, gas exchange to occur in the capillaries. It also is what drives fluid movement throughout the body. But there are a number of things that can affect blood flow through these arteries, through these veins, through the blood vessels, okay? If I increase the length, that's going to affect the heart. There's more mileage to fill, so now I have to be either an effective pumper and pump a greater volume of blood, or I need to pump faster. So I hope that that connection is intuitive in your head, even if you've never really thought about it until this very moment, okay? There are a lot of things that can affect this pressure gradient from one side to the other side of this vascular tree that we have from the arterial to the venule side. We have several things that can affect blood pressure from one side to the next. All of it. The biggest word that I could use to affect blood flow and therefore affect cardiac output would be the word resistance. It is the resistance that the heart has to overcome to push blood through the system. It is the resistance that I need to overcome in a capillary bed to get filtration to occur and ultimately reabsorption to occur on the backside of it. But here, when we're talking about blood pressure, it is this resistance that occurs in the blood vessels that we're talking about. And really, we're ultimately talking about peripheral resistance, which you're like, well, what would be central resistance? Well, central resistance could be more associated with inside the heart itself, and I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about what in the hell is going on outside of the heart. Okay. Resistance is what the blood has to encounter. And when we talk about resistance, we are talking about friction. Blood fills the blood vessels. Here's your sign, right? What happens when two substances come together? They rub. What does this create? Friction. And the word that we are using for this friction or this encounter that happens between the blood and the wall of the blood vessel is resistance. Resistance can be affected by how long a blood vessel. If a blood vessel is this long, it's got to rub along that entire length. If a blood vessel is this long, it's only got to go along that length. So how long this blood vessel is. Again, and if I add a pound of fat, I'm adding 5 miles of blood vessels. In a week, let's say I gain 2 pounds of fat, gain 10 miles of blood vessels. The heart's got to work harder to push. I can increase viscosity. I can increase the size of the lumen. We have different lumen sizes, right? Different lumen size on the arterial side, different lumen sizes on the venous side. All of these things go into the factors that affect blood pressure. It's obviously not as straightforward as, is your heart working a hell of a lot or is it not working a hell of a lot? A lot of things that go into it. This first one, guys, viscosity, we've already talked about it. We already talked about it. The viscosity is thickness. The greater the thickness, the greater the resistance. What is the only thing? What is the primary thing that can affect resistance? Formed elements. Which formed element? Which formed element is going to have the greatest impact on viscosity? On the thickness of blood? What are the formed elements of blood?
Water.
Well, there's the leukocytes, erythrocytes, and plasma.
Platelets.
Well, platelets.
Platelets. Those are the three. Of those three formed elements, which one is the primary?
Erythrocytes.
Say that again. I'm sorry.
The erythrocytes?
Yep, the erythrocytes, the red blood cells, right? Remember, that's the hematocrit number. It's like 98% of the formed elements. Red blood cells are erythrocytes. So when it comes to viscosity, how can I increase viscosity? By going into a region where I don't have a lot of oxygen, going from here to Denver. Low oxygen, the body increases EPO production, which increases stimulation of the body's bone marrow to start increasing the production of red blood cells. And all of a sudden, bam, I got an increase in red blood cells. Do the same thing with blood doping. If you're dehydrated, not a lot of water, a lot of red blood cells. All of these things will increase. And if you dehydrate, like you're cutting for a show, like I talked about in that lecture with blood, and you blood dope, holy Christ, that's a lot of viscosity. And your heart, God love her. I wish she wouldn't have done it, but she did it. And yeah, that's a lot of viscosity. It's like pushing honey through your blood vessels. The heart just can't do it. If you have a very low blood count, you're not going to be really viscous. Okay. Not going to be a lot of red blood cells. So blood can move around really fast if you have a low blood cell count. And remember, that's not ideal. I don't want blood going through everything really, 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 really fast. If it goes really, 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 really fast through the capillary bed, I don't have exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide, nutrients and waste. Not going to be able to do a lot of stuff. I don't have a lot of oxygen going in to maintain the demand for metabolic activity. Okay. So one of the major factors of resistance, of peripheral resistance, formed elements, red blood cells, increasing viscosity. Vessel length, I talked about it. The longer the blood vessel, the more interaction between the blood and the wall of the blood vessel. Again, what does that create? Heat, which creates friction, swelling and inflammation. Friction. The heart has to overcome that. Radius. Blood has a couple different types of flow rates, turbulent flow and laminar flow. If the blood vessel is really large, you have this region here where we can have a little laminar flow occurring. I'm just going to put lam. It just goes straight. It's not coming in contact with bends in the walls that occur here or buildup of plaque that may occur here. Out here, blood vessels come in contact with this thing, may bounce around a little bit. If they're interacting with stuff, hitting the wall, hitting a blood vessel, hitting the wall, hitting a blood vessel, hitting a wall, hitting a blood vessel, that's going to slow it down, right? So as the blood vessel diameter increases, resistance goes down. Flow increases. So when I vasodilate, I open up that blood vessel, blood can go in there really, really easily. Flow increases. Flow increases because the resistance decreases because the diameter got bigger. If I get really smaller, now blood can hit those sides of the wall a lot more. And there's a lot more turbulent flow to blood, not a lot of laminar flow. So it slows it down. I mean, I don't know how much. It slows it down though. Okay, it's something that the heart has to overcome, or the blood vessels have to overcome. Those are the three major sources of resistance when it comes to what the heart and the blood vessels have to overcome to maintain a normal MAP, mean arterial pressure, which is to say a constant, consistent amount of blood flow, which is to say a constant blood pressure, which is to say constant blood pressure gradient difference. All that's the same thing. All that's equal. I connect all those dots and sew it all together. How many formed elements? Viscosity. How long is the blood vessels? Or do I have normal body mass? How much body mass do I have? What type of body mass do I have? How big the blood vessel lumen is. If it's really large, flow can go, very little resistance. Decrease the diameter, vasoconstrict, and now I increase the resistance and I decrease the flow. I don't know why in the hell they put that F as flow is proportional to, or let's just say equal to, change in pressure over resistance. As resistance increases, total blood flow decreases. They're inversely proportional, hence the sign. Delta P is just change in blood pressure, change in pressure. Directly related to change in pressure, inversely related to resistance. Increase the resistance, decrease the flow. Increase the resistance, decrease the flow. And that's what they're trying to show you here. Vasodilate, decrease the resistance, and I can increase the flow. Less resistance, more flow. Hell, I can even increase how hard the heart or how fast the heart contracts, right? By affecting the nodal tissue within there to increase the rate and force of contraction. Vasoconstrict increases the resistance and decreases the flow. On the exam, how would I ask these questions? Probably some multiple choice type questions. That may be how I ask it on this exam. Sometimes I give small little fill in the blank scenarios and you can fill in the words, but So fill in the blank type of questions is what I've done in the past as well. I don't know how I'm going to do it on this one. I guess a short answer question would be good, but I don't know. I want to save the short answer questions for big concepts. So I guess I could weave in and out talking about a cardiac cycle and how that would be affected if blah, 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 blah was the situation. Here's your blood pressure. Here's some things that they're taking. So I guess I could ask it in that way, but understanding these factors that influence blood flow that can directly affect blood pressure, which can directly affect how much blood is getting to tissues. MAP. Always good questions to ask. Always good questions to ask.